When the screens go dark and cellular networks vanish, your first instinct will be to run where everyone else is going. That is a fatal mistake. In a total communication blackout, government hubs become gridlocked traps where resources disappear in minutes. If you follow the crowd, you are choosing collective chaos over individual survival. And here's the thing, the crowd always feels safe, it feels organized, it feels like someone has a plan. Nobody has a plan. Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you could be the difference between riding out a crisis and becoming a cautionary statistic. Imagine waking up tomorrow and your phone has no signal. You open your laptop, nothing. The news won't load. Your smart TV is just a black rectangle on the wall. You step outside and your neighbor is staring at his phone like he's trying to will the bars back into existence through sheer frustration. Internet is gone. Cellular networks, gone. Digital coordination systems that power everything from grocery restocking to emergency dispatch, completely offline. It is a nationwide communication blackout. Now, here's a fun fact about modern society. People have full-on meltdowns when the Wi-Fi goes out for 5 minutes. There is documented anxiety around this. People will stand in the middle of their living room, walk to a different corner of the house, hold their phone up toward the ceiling as if altitude has anything to do with it. We are, as a civilization, deeply, profoundly dependent on connectivity. So when it's all gone, the psychological shockwave hits fast and it hits hard. And how people react in the first hour determines whether they survive the first week. Let's break this down step by step, starting with the most dangerous thing that happens inside your own head. The first thing that kills people in a blackout scenario isn't dehydration, it isn't exposure, it's panic, and more specifically, it's where panic tells you to go. Here's what happens inside the human brain when familiar systems collapse. It panics, and then it seeks authority. This is deeply wired into us. When we feel unsafe, we move towards structures that historically meant protection. Government buildings, emergency services, large organized groups. In normal times, that instinct works, but in a total communication blackout, that instinct becomes a trap. Without digital coordination, those authority structures can't function. There's no real-time data flowing to emergency managers. There's no way to track resource distribution. There's no central intelligence telling anyone how many people are showing up or what they need. But the people flooding towards those locations don't know that. They just feel the pull, and so they go, by the thousands, and then by the tens of thousands. Meanwhile, the person at home who paused, took a breath, and asked, wait, is this actually the smartest move? That person just bought themselves a critical window of time. Panic is contagious. Calm is a tactical weapon. The moment you recognize that your instinct should follow the crowd is a biological response, not a logical one, you've separated yourself from 90% of the people who are about to make their situation significantly worse. Now that we understand the psychology, let's look at what is physically happening at those locations everyone is rushing toward, because the reality is worse than most people expect. Within hours, those locations start collapsing under their own weight, and here's why. The supply chains that stock those emergency resources depend on digital logistics systems. The trucks that were supposed to bring water and food, they're waiting on dispatch confirmations that aren't coming. The staff coordinating arrivals, they're working off clipboards and a gut instinct. Now compound that with traffic. Every major road leading into population centers becomes a parking lot. Not a slow parking lot, a stopped parking lot. People abandoning their cars in the road because they ran out of fuel idling. People getting into confrontations over lane merges that stretch back for miles. Emergency vehicles trying to navigate through it all and getting nowhere. If you had decided to drive into the middle of all that because you assume someone else has a plan, congratulations, you're now sitting in gridlock, burning fuel, unable to turn around, with no communication, watching your options shrink by the minute. The highway is not a route. In that scenario, the highway is a trap shaped like a road. Centralized hubs fail because they were designed for manageable emergencies, not systemic collapse. They have finite supplies, finite staff, and zero ability to scale up when digital infrastructure is gone. So if the government shelter is a trap and the highway is a trap, what's the move? That's exactly where we're going next. This is the part most people never think about, and it's the most important concept in this entire video, what survival experts call deselection. The deliberate, conscious choice not to go where everyone else is going. That simple, counterintuitive decision gives you a massive tactical advantage. While the crowd is gridlocked on the interstate, you are moving. While they're waiting in line at a shelter that's already out of water, you are not in that line. Mobility is survival. The ability to make decisions and act on them without being stuck in collective chaos is worth more than almost any single piece of gear you could own. This means using secondary roads, neighborhood streets, routes that don't show up on the standard GPS path that everyone's been defaulting to for years. It means moving quietly and deliberately, not broadcasting your plans, not announcing your destination. And I want to say something here that might feel uncomfortable. In a genuine systemic collapse, being unremarkable is an asset. You don't want to be the person with the loudest truck and the most visible gear. You want to be the person nobody notices leaving. Comment below, by the way, if the internet and phones suddenly died tomorrow, where would you go first? I'm genuinely curious what your plan looks like. Now, mind you, deselection only works if you actually have somewhere to go, which brings us to the most practical piece of preparation you can do right now. Before any crisis hits, before the first sign of trouble, you need to have already identified where you're going. This is what separates someone who survives from someone who just got lucky. Pre-scouted secondary locations. Moving away from chaos without a destination is just aimless wandering, and that's its own kind of danger. This is why pre-scouted secondary locations are the cornerstone of any serious preparedness plan. What are you looking for? A few things. First, access to water. Natural, consistent, ideally not dependent on municipal systems. A river, a well, a spring. Water is non-negotiable, and in a collapse, it becomes the most contested resource within days. Second, low population density. The further you are from concentrations of panic and people, the more time and space you have to operate rationally. This doesn't mean you need a cabin in the wilderness. It might just mean a property outside of town, a rural contact's land, a location that most people would never think to go to because it doesn't have a big sign saying official emergency shelter above the door. Third, defensible terrain. You don't need to be a military strategist, but you do want natural features that give you visibility and limit easy approach. Hills, tree lines, structures with limited entry points. You want to see what's coming before it arrives. These locations need to be identified, visited, and understood before a crisis happens. You cannot scout effectively when you're scared, exhausted, and running on adrenaline. You do this work now, in calm, so that you execute it smoothly later. But getting to your location is one victory. What happens after the first few days, that's a different battle entirely, and most people aren't ready for it. Here's where a lot of people think the story ends. You found your location, you waited out the chaos, you're safe. But surviving the first 72 hours is only the beginning. What comes next is where real preparedness is tested, and it's called long-term resilience. This is where most prepper thinking stops short. People stock up on water and canned food, check a few boxes, and feel ready. But long-term resilience requires systems, not stockpiles. You need independent food sources, gardens, foraging knowledge, the ability to grow or find calories rather than just consume stored ones. A stockpile has an end date. A productive food system doesn't. You need analog tools, physical maps, mechanical equipment that doesn't rely on software telling you how to do it. Not because technology is bad, but because in this scenario, technology is gone, and skills don't run out of battery. You need peer-to-peer communication, small, trusted networks of people who know each other, share information face-to-face, and operate as a unit. Not a massive community of strangers at a government hub, a small group of vetted people with complementary skills and established trust. 5 capable, trustworthy people is exponentially more valuable than 50 panicking strangers. That's how resilient communities have always worked throughout history. Long before the internet, long before cellular networks, people survived genuine systemic collapses by being locally connected, skilled, and prepared. We are not reinventing anything. We are just remembering what we forgot. Because when communication systems collapse, the crowd becomes the most dangerous thing on the landscape. Fear spreads faster than information, resources vanish faster than people expect, and everyone chasing the same solution causes that solution to collapse even faster. The people who make it through are the ones who stepped back, thought clearly, and moved early while everyone else was still staring at a phone with no signal. Because at the end of the day, that's the whole goal here. When the grid goes dark and the chaos plays out, you want to be the last man standing. Not the loudest, not the most aggressive, but calm, prepared, and still moving forward while everyone else burns through their options in the first 48 hours. That's exactly what this channel is built around. Every video we put out is one more piece of the puzzle, one more layer of preparation between you and whatever comes next. So if that's the kind of content you want more of, hit subscribe. Drop a comment below and tell me about your plan if the internet dies tomorrow. I read every single one. Share this with someone you'd actually want by your side when things get bad. Stay sharp, stay ready, and whatever you do, don't follow the crowd.